This is why you don't want to own a pickaxe. On March 31st, 1922, 6 residents at the Hinterkaifeck Farm in Bavaria, Germany were brutally murdered with a pickaxe. Among the victims were husband and wife Andreas and Kazilia Gruber, their widowed daughter Victoria, and also her 2 children Kazilia and Josef, as well as the family maid Maria Baumgartner. When authorities began going through the farm, they found 2-year-old Josef, who was murdered inside of his crib. They also found Maria, who was murdered in her bed. The remainder of the family, however, had been slaughtered inside of the barn. All 4 were stacked on top of each other. What makes this story even more unnerving is whoever did this actually resided in the residence for between 4 to 7 days after killing the entire family. We know this since in the week following the murders, the cattle on the farm is still fed, neighbors report seeing smoke come from the chimney, and on Saturday, the family dog is found tied outside of the house. It was also reported that the killer even milked the cows. But this is where it gets even stranger. 6 months prior to the murder of the Gruber family, the maid quits because she tells them that in the middle of the night she's been hearing voices, she hears footsteps above her in the attic, and when she tells the Gruber family, they just dismiss her as being crazy, and they think honestly nothing of it because they're not hearing any of this. But exactly 6 months later, the family begins to hear these noises, and then Mr. Gruber right here, he suddenly finds a foreign newspaper in the house that he's never seen before. Suddenly, a pair of keys for the house go missing. Then one morning, he walks out to the tool shed and he sees that there's a bunch of scratches on the outside of it, almost like somebody was trying to break into the shed itself. Then lastly, 1 week prior to the murder, Mr. Gruber tells his neighbors that he found a set of footprints that was leading from the back of the house, where the woods were, from the woods, all the way to the back of his home. Now, what makes this even more disturbing is there was not another set of footprints leading from the house, meaning whoever walks into the house that night, they stayed there. When authorities went through the home, they ruled out robbery because as they searched the home, they found large sums of money that were right out in the open. So that made them believe that this was most likely a murder due to passion. And for suspects, the only person the authorities really identified was the local neighbor, who was Lorenz Schleitenbauer. He was a suspect since Mr. Schleitenbauer believed that Victoria's 2-year-old son, Josef, was his, since the 2 were intimate and put 2 and 2 together. However, it was later discovered that Josef's father was Andreas, who was Victoria's father. So, very disturbingly, Andreas played the role of grandfather and father to Josef. Believe it or not, this case just only begins to get even more odd and disturbing. So Maria, who is the family maid, on the day of the murders, it was literally her first day working. So her first day, she received an axe pick to the face. And on another disturbing note, at the time of autopsy, the family's heads were all removed so this way they could be studied. And at this time, they managed to lose all 6 of their heads. So the entire Gruber family had to be buried headless. To this day, the murder of the Gruber family has never been solved and most likely probably will never be. A year after the murders, the farm was torn down and currently there is still a memorial in place for the family. Ultimately, this makes you think if only the family listened to the first maid who had quit 6 months before and listened to her when she said, "I hear someone in the attic, I hear footsteps, I hear noises, it just doesn't make sense." What is even more creepy on another note is, realistically, this person who ended up murdering the entire family was living in the home for who knows how long until they ended up coming out and finally committing this deed.